And with the program today, with the government of Ondo and Kano State filing a suit at the Supreme Court urging the court to stop the federal government from implementing the policy on redesign of the Naira and reducing daily cash withdrawal limits by bank customers. They also filed a separate application to join the suit instituted by Zamfara, Kaduna, and Kogi states at the Supreme Court on the same issue. In an originating summon filed and signed by the Attorney General of Ondo State, Charles Titiloye, the state government prayed the Supreme Court to stop the implementation of the directive issued by federal government through the Central Bank of Nigeria on limitation of daily cash withdrawals from banks. Mr. Titiloye said the policy has totally paralyzed, brought to a standstill the activities of Ondo State government and adversely affected economic and commercial activities in the state. Joining me now in the studio, I have a lawyer, Justice Ojeno, while Shegwa Wosoya, human rights advocate, is joining me via Zoom. Thank you for coming, gentlemen.
My pleasure.
Mr. Wosoya, are you there? Good evening.
I can't hear them.
All right, let me just come to you straight, Mr. Ojeno. What do you make of this recent intervention by the Supreme Court on this whole Naira redesign?
Okay, I think it's very, very important. It was very crucial. I dare say to the existence of this nation. But I think it's actually code comforting that it's not a decision that will totally alleviate all the issues that might have arisen. But again, it served to put paid on the killing of the policy, or the fact that, okay, the CBN said as at Friday, the policy ought to kick in place, and maybe the old notes will cease to be legal tender. So the decision of the Supreme Court so far, before the 15th of this month, has actually maybe saved the skin of this nation to a large extent. And when the going to court of the governors of Ondo State and of the governor of, is it Kano State now? I feel that they are trying to expand the arguments that have been made so far by the earlier three governors that went to court. And the government of Ondo State is basically saying that, and I think it's a genius argument, that the Money Laundering Act, Section 2 of the Money Laundering Act, already set limits by saying that, okay, individuals can take only 5 million and corporate organizations can take 10 million. That the CBN does not have the power to alter, amend, or maybe abolish whatever it is that the National Assembly has put in place by way of those cash limits, by the CBN bringing its own cash limits to probably override the cash limits that the National Assembly has put in place. So the existential question that the Ondo State government is asking the Supreme Court to interpret is, does an agency of government have the power to override the National Assembly in this kind of issue? And of course, after they asked that question, they also joined the suit as instituted by the three earlier governors. Kano State is saying, can the president unilaterally, without being in consultation with maybe the National Executive Council and all the other bodies that were put in place by Section 148 of the Constitution, in addition to Part 1 and 3rd Schedule, Paragraph 19 of the 3rd Schedule to the Constitution, can the president unilaterally bring this, put this policy in place without consultation with those bodies? And of course, the question is going to be determined by the Supreme Court when the time eventually comes. But what I see, my take on this whole issue is that all the state governors are running away from the pivotal question. And you will see it when they say that the federal government the Supreme Court should order the federal government to stop working through the agency of the CBN to implement this policy. So all of them are saying they are not going to the CBN directly. They are not adding the CBN as a party for obvious reasons, because it might flout the provisions of Section 232. So all of them are trying to walk through they are using the principal agent argument that if we can get the Supreme Court to use it to order the principal, then its agents will not be able to carry out such functions. But we have seen in the popular cases, especially as instituted by the current vice president when he was the Attorney General of Lagos State. Of course, Lagos State was at its edge too, just like Nigeria is currently in dire straits. And what the court decided in that case was that the federal government is not the proper party to be sued in the original jurisdiction pursuant to Section 232 if you want to catch an agency of government. That you can only use Section 202 if it is a dispute between a state and the federation, not a state and the federal government. But again, it is for the Supreme Court to come to the conclusion on that day when, of course, more robust arguments will be advanced before it.
You recently, I'm sure you're aware of the banks. Some banks are closed down. They will tell you they don't have a cash to give out and all of that. Some are blaming these commercial banks, while some are also saying, CBN, the way you went about the implementation is not it at all. Where do you stand in this whole thing?
I don't think the banks are without blame, because it's been proven with repeated evidence that some of them are taking advantage of the whole situation in order to be able to...
I'm sorry, I hear Mr. Shego Musaya has joined now. Good evening and welcome to the show, Mr. Shego Musaya. Mr. Shego, are you there? Good evening, Mr. Shego. Oh, I guess we lost connection with him. So let's move on.
Okay, I said that it's not, the commercial banks are not spotless. They are not without blame in this situation, because preponderant evidence points to the fact that a lot of them have colluded. Because the monies that are being spent in bulk, you see the way the Nigerian currency is being abused at events and all. How are those monies coming out? They are definitely not coming directly from the coffers of the CBN. They are coming from these commercial banks. But the bulk of the blame must be placed at the footstep of the CBN. It is very, very obvious that it's a show of shame. They are very, very good with maybe postulating on papers and maybe grandstanding and boasting. But when it comes to implementation, it's very, very obvious that they are very, very incompetent. They didn't set their ducks in a row. They didn't put the round pegs in round holes. A lot of them are just banding beautiful suits and maybe moving in their jets all about the place. They didn't hit the streets. They didn't go to the hinterlands. They didn't go to the villages. Everybody is affected. Maybe not everybody is affected, but I am affected. Majority of the populace is affected. There is no cash in the system. And we have not arrived at a situation where we can go, in quote, as cashless as we possibly can go, because there are bound to be transactions which are cash-based. People are commuting from one place to another, and the people who they are commuting with are not carrying babies POS or whatever other means about. So there has to still be a number of cash in the system. And since they have taken these old notes and there are no new notes to replace them, that lacuna is there. So a lot of transactions are not going on. And for economies to grow, transactions must keep taking place. So the dynamics and the depth of those transactions will determine how deep or how rich an economy is. And if we now get to a situation where we practically wind down transactions, there's going to be chaos, and that's what the Supreme Court used this stopgap order, which I consider a lightning striking twice, because it is very rare for an ex parte order to come directly from the Supreme Court.
All right, Justice, the 10 days expansion, or the whole deadline thing has expired, and you hear people saying some are no longer collecting this old note, and still the new Naira notes are not available. What possible solution do you think, can you suggest will solve this whole issue?
Okay, over the weekend, I think I heard the governor of Zamfara State actually say that anybody who refuses to collect the old notes will be arrested. That is one of those governors that instituted the suit. He actually gave out that directive. Maybe when we should have our leaders, our political leaders, come up front and probably, or get people to explain the implications of this judgment to us, that till the 15th in the interim, till the 15th, the old notes are still legal tender. And the CBN has actually not now withdrawn to say that, okay, even after the 15th, that you cannot take the old notes to the bank. So those openings are still there. The federal government should try to bring a political solution to this. Because if a President Buhari, for example, maybe eats the humble pie and swallows his pride and comes forward to say, yeah, we see that this policy is not working because of lapses in implementation, then they can actually now just own up and say, okay, we extend it for a reasonable period more in order to alleviate these sufferings. And CBN, we are hearing that, okay, they don't have enough notes to print new currency. Some are saying, okay, that allegation has been debunked. Maybe some of those old legal tenders can be reintroduced into the system in order to save the kind of excruciating economic pains that the Nigerian populace is going through.
All right, thank you very much for your contributions. Welcome back, and it's still Newsweek, where we discuss the biggest stories that made the headlines in the week. Now, despite the Supreme Court interim injunction restraining the federal government from suspending the acceptance of the old Naira notes on February 10 deadline, the newly elected Nigerian Labour Congress NLC President, Comrade Joseph Ajero, has given the federal government a 7-day ultimatum to make currency and fuel available to Nigerians. Failure to do so would cause it to call out its members for a nationwide industrial action. Speaking at its 13th delegate conference in Abuja, he noted that the Congress is already mobilizing its members across the country for a mass action. Ajero insisted that the court ruling on the suspension of the Naira swap does not guarantee that it will be available. I still have Justice Ojeno and a lawyer with me, Shego Awosanya, who is still trying to connect with us. But let me just go straight with you. The new president, Joe Ajero, is threatening that if the federal government does not make the whole fuel scarcity stop and Naira redesign scarcity to stop, they are embarking on nationwide strike. What do you think about this? Okay,
I think that he's speaking the quintessential language of labor. Of course, they are bound to make threats. But again, being a person that knows a bit about the history of Joe Ajero, I don't think his threats are empty. It's a very tough nut to crack. Maybe if NLC was what it was at the time when Oshomole was there, maybe he would have been able, if it had not been broken into TUC and all these organizations, maybe we would have seen an Oshomole Part 2, or even we dare say that Oshomole would have been Joe Ajero Part 1, because Joe Ajero is a very tough nut to crack. But having said that, I dare say that if he tries to implement this strike action, I think it's wrong timing. The country is already very tense. So I feel that actions like this, he should wait. He should keep his gunpowder as dry. He should wait till the new administration comes up, and he should now, I feel, bring labor to exactly where labor should be and use the instrumentality of the labor movement to change our country, or to force the powers that be to come to terms and give some irreducible minimums to the people, which I feel that is one of the major roles of labor. So I just feel that it should just maybe put a hold on the ultimatum. This country cannot afford one more stress.
All right. The part of what he mentioned in his speech, acceptance speech, was he's going to be pushing for a new minimum wage policy. What do you think about this?
It's their job. It's their job. It's the job of labor leadership to ensure that whatever it is that its members, because the members have to have a word for their money in a manner of speaking. So whatever it is that its members desires, it is the job, it is the duty of the NLC, the president and the executive members to see that their objectives are carried out. And almost all over the world, it's a campaign topic, it's a campaign pillar. Labor union in America, you see that Democrats, they are usually, we call them leftists, they are usually for unionization, labor and labor movement. So, and one of the things that labor will always ask for is increase in pay, no matter where the pay has gotten to. And if you give them increase in pay today, they may just give you a breathing space for just a while. And after that while, sorry, they're going to come to you, and it's going to be as if they had a total amnesia that we just increased it the last time, but it's just their stock in trade.
All right, Ayuba Weber also has successfully completed his tenure as the president of Nigerian Labour. What can you say about his performance, and as well, what can you say about the person of the new president, Joe Ajaero, and the task before him? Okay,
Ayuba Weber, maybe he didn't do as much as we would have expected him to, but again, it may be as a result of the fact that he was wearing too many caps. At some point, I think he just also left office as the leader of international labor. So he wasn't just carrying the shoulders. He carried on his shoulders the labor movement in Nigeria. So he was also carrying. But one major thing that we can commend Ayuba Weber for is the fact that there was peaceful transmission of power, unlike what happened when he was taking over power. Transmitted power peacefully to the current Joe Ajaero, who I know a lot of people may not know that much, but we are expecting a lot of drama in the coming months. I hope. I just pray it doesn't start with these 7 days.
Interesting. All right, thank you very much for your contributions so far. But the People's Democratic Party, PDP, has expelled the former governor of Enugu State, Senator Chimaroke Nnamani, and 6 others from the party for anti-party activities and other offences in violation of the party's constitution. Also expelled was Oluwajumiloju Fayose, son of former governor of Ekiti State, Ayodele of Fayose. The main opposition party had last month suspended Nnamani, representing Enugu East at the Senate, but he urged that the party argued rather that the party violated his rights to fair hearing. But the National Publicity Secretary, Honorable Debo Olugunduba, in a statement issued last week, said the decision of the NUW was sequel to the recommendation of the National Disciplinary Committee and pursuant to relevant sections of the PDP. As well, the party charged all members of the party across the country to remain united, focused on the mission of the party to rescue, rebuild, and redirect the nation from misrule. I still have Mr. Ujeno in the studio with me, and I want you to give me your thought in this whole thing, the expulsion of Nnamani, knowing that he is the candidate of the party for Enugu East in this same 25th February election. How is this going to play out?
It's unfortunate. Well, it's going to be a difficult one for the PDP, and I don't feel that however much you don't like a candidate, you're not supposed to take such a gamble. A candidate that you have in an election for a major position as a whole senatorial district who doubled as a governor of the state at some point, meaning that he has some clout. However we choose to look at it, no matter his activities, you don't just hang him in the sun to dry like that, because it means you are losing a huge swath of the election that you are even expecting. But again, I don't see him now where he has started kicking against that decision of the party, and rightfully so, because if we check that decision, I for one also think that it's an unjust decision. It's an unconstitutional decision on the part of the PDP constitution, because the constitution of the PDP clearly states that it is the NEC that has the power to wield such disciplinary powers of suspension or expulsion against a person who is a member of a legislative house. And he presently, Chimaroke Nnamani, is presently the member of a legislative house, the National House of National Assembly, Senate. So it is not the NWC, pursuant to the amended constitution of the PDP, that will take that decision. It is the NEC that will take the decision. So on the ground of, if you check cases like Mmadu Koluma and Ikem Dilin, the court, one of the things that will make jurisdiction, a court have jurisdiction, is when it is the judex, the proper judex, the proper panel that's supposed to give the decision that deliver the judgment. And in this case, it is the wrong judge that delivered the judgment. And of course, he also relied on breach of fair hearing that wasn't heard, not just him and the others that were suspended, that they were not heard. If that's the situation, it's also fundamental because you must hear the other party. It's basic principle in law. We call it audi alteram partem. You must listen to the alternative party.
Mr. Justice, but you remember that Senator Nnamani has repeatedly canvassed support for the opposition party, the presidential candidate of the opposition party, which is Bola Ahmed Tinubu, against his own his own party presidential candidate. Do you agree with the journalist who said he actually triggered his own expulsion?
Maybe, see, there are a lot of anti-party activity. If you want to say, okay, you want to take down political opposition, your members out for anti-party activities, there are a lot of people who have committed anti-party activities in the PDP. Yeah, the G5 governors, for example. The reason why they are not being excised or gutted is because of pragmatic reasons. If you chase a wiki out now, or the governor of Oyo State, or the governor of Benue State, and the other two parties, you already know that you are already done and dusted. You are doomed. That's the same pragmatic approach you could have used for an Nnamani, who is a very, very strong man in Enugu. So you are not using that approach. You are now using unconstitutional means to try to remove him from his office. Yes, and Nnamani, and what Nnamani and the G5 governors and the chairman of the PDP in Ebonyi State and all the other people and the son of Fayose have been saying are the same thing. You are unjust in the way you are holding both the presidential ticket and the chairmanship ticket. So they are crying injustice and they are taking all those actions because of the injustice that has been meted out to them, because even the people that are suspending them, they are counter-accusing them of committing anti-party activities. So you accuse me of committing anti-party activities, I accuse you of committing anti-party activities, you're now using illegal means to try to remove me. They know the provisions of the constitution of the party. That's what they are supposed to follow, stricto sensu. If they don't follow it stricto sensu, maybe by way of fair hearing or by way of constituting the wrong panel of justices or judges, as the case may be, then, sorry, their case is bad. So
the Fayose son that's also expelled, do you think is just in a we're almost out of time, do you think it has something to do with the whole G5 governor thing?
Yes. He is also crying injustice. He's also crying foul.
Wow.
So that's the long and short of it.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Justice Ojeno, for your wonderful contribution to this whole topics. Thank you for coming. As well, thank you for being part of the show. But remember, you can follow the conversation on our social media platforms at TVC News NG or on our website at tvcnews.tv.